October 17th, 1966. A Friday night in Manhattan. In the Flatiron district, a fire breaks out in the basement of an art supply store. The kind of call the FDNY runs 100 times a year. Within the hour, 12 firefighters will be dead, not from the flames they came to fight, but from the floor they were standing on, a floor that was already burning beneath their boots, and they never felt it. The Flatiron District, 1966. A neighborhood of cast iron storefronts and aging commercial buildings, most of them a century old. On the block between 22nd and 23rd Streets stood two buildings that backed directly onto each other. On the 22nd Street side, the American Art Galleries, an art dealer that kept lacquer, paint, and varnished wood frames in its basement. On the 23rd Street side, a Wonder drugstore. At about 9:36 that night, the alarm came in. Fire in the art gallery's basement. 3 engines, 2 ladders, a battalion chief, and a deputy chief rolled in on the first alarm. To reach the fire from the rear, crews pushed in from the 23rd Street side, through this drugstore, working toward the flames the way they'd been trained to. It looked like a job they'd knock down and go home from. Every man in that building thought he was standing on solid ground. Any of us would have. Here's what none of them could see. The cellar under the art gallery didn't stop at the property line. It reached back underneath the drugstore. The men advancing across that drugstore floor were standing directly over open fire, and the fire had a head start. To expand his workshop, the art dealer had broken illegally through the rear cellar wall, extending 65 feet into the basement beneath the drugstore, with no permit and no inspection. The crews who reached that cinderblock wall smelled gas, but found no fire. They had no way to know the seat of the blaze was burning on the other side of it, directly under the drugstore. That hidden wall did 2 things. It concealed the fire, and it concealed how far it had already spread. There was one more cruelty in the construction. The floor those firefighters stood on was terrazzo, a 5-inch slab of stone and cement poured over ordinary timber joists, thick enough that the punishing heat below never reached their feet, even as the fire ate those joists apart. A firefighter's body is his warning system. Heat through the floor, heat on the ears, tells you when a building's about to turn on you. That night, the warning never came. For more than an hour, the crews worked the fire, venting, searching, pushing hose. Beneath them, unseen, the fire ate through the floor joists, quietly taking the strength out of the structure holding them up. At 10:39 p.m., a section of the floor roughly 15 by 35 feet gave way at once. There was no groan, no visible sag to run from. 10 firefighters dropped straight into the burning cellar. In the same moment, on the first floor, fire flashed over. Coleman took 2 more. 12 men were gone. It would take their brothers hours, digging through rubble and fire, to bring them all out. They came from every rank in the responding force. A deputy chief, a battalion chief, lieutenants, firefighters with decades on the job, and men just starting out. They died the same way, on the same floor. Division 3, Deputy Chief Thomas A. Riley. Firefighter William F. McCarran. Battalion 7, Battalion Chief Walter J. Higgins. Engine 18, Lieutenant Joseph Priore. Firefighter James V. Gallina. Firefighter Joseph Kelly. Firefighter Daniel L. Ray. Firefighter Bernard A. Tepper. Ladder 7, Lieutenant John J. Finley. Firefighter John G. Berry. Firefighter Rudolph F. Kaminsky. Firefighter Carl Lee. Days later, some 10,000 firefighters lined Fifth Avenue. For the next 35 years, the 23rd Street fire would stand as the worst single loss of life the FDNY had ever suffered in the line of duty until the morning of September 11th, 2001. A loss like this doesn't stay in the past. It gets written into how the next generation is trained, into the size up you do before you go interior, into the way you're taught to read a building before you trust it. The 23rd Street fire became a cornerstone lesson in building construction, teaching firefighters to read a structure before they trust it. Hidden cellars, concealed void spaces, illegal alterations, shared basements that don't respect property lines. No one had gathered that intelligence before the fire, and years later, that gap became a national standard. NFPA 1620, which tells departments to walk their buildings and know them before the alarm ever comes. The questions that get asked on a fire ground today were paid for, in part, on that floor. It reshaped how the fire service fights cellar fires. When a crew takes a line down into a basement, another line goes in above them, at the top of the stairs, to protect the men below and hold their way out. And it hardened a hard truth. You cannot always feel the fire beneath you. Decades later, thermal imaging cameras would finally start to close that gap, letting firefighters see the heat that killed 12 men who could only stand on it. Every year, the FDNY and the families gather at the site to read the names. And every year, in firehouses around the country, instructors pull up this fire again, because the building that beat them in 1966 has cousins on every block, in every city, still standing today. "12 firefighters walked into an ordinary fire and were beaten by a building that lied about itself. The lessons they left behind still ride on every rig. We remember the 23rd Street 12. We tell these stories because the lessons are still riding out today. If you're on the job or working to get there, this is the history the job is built on. Follow the last alarm. We're covering the fires that changed the fire service, one at a time. Stories like this one deserve to be remembered. And if you know a fire that should be, tell me in the comments. Every case study in this series starts with someone saying, you should cover this one. If this video earned it, I'll helps more people find these stories. And if you want to be here for the next one, subscribe. There's more where this came from. I run 2 other channels, The Stoic Firefighter, on the mindset this job demands, and Firefighter Connection for anyone building a career in the fire service. Both are linked below. Until the next alarm, learn the lessons, pass them on,